In a world where past and present collide, one woman embarks on a journey to escape the shadows of her past. Her dreams of a fresh start are overshadowed by haunting memories and secrets buried deep beneath the surface. What lies beyond the pain? And can she ever truly escape the darkness that follows her? As the bustling streets of Lagos unfold before her eyes, Edidiong is about to take the first step into a world of uncertainty where every moment could change her life forever. Edidiong stepped off the bus and into the chaotic streets of Lagos. The city she hoped would be her fresh start. The air was thick with the smell of exhaust and the sound of honking cars. Everywhere she looked, people were in a hurry, moving with purpose. She clutched her small suitcase tightly, taking in the sights and sounds of the city that she had only seen on television. Lagos was a far cry from Mperini, her small village nestled in the heart of the Niger-Delta in Akwa Ibom State. Here in Lagos, the buildings stretched high into the sky, and the streets were lined with vendors selling everything from fresh fruit to electronics. As she made her way to the apartment she had rented with the little money she had saved, Edidiong couldn't help but feel a pang of nervousness. She was leaving behind not just her home, but the painful memories that had haunted her since that fateful night, years ago. She was determined to rebuild her life, to find happiness, and maybe even love in this vast city. But the past is a tricky thing. No matter how far you run, it has a way of catching up with you. Mperini was a village that moved to the rhythm of the river that ran alongside it. The people there were simple, hardworking, and closely knit. Life in Mperini revolved around the seasons, the planting and harvesting of crops, and the occasional visit from outsiders, usually oil workers who came to work on the nearby swamp rigs. Edidiong was 18, full of life and dreams of the future. She had just passed her university entrance exams, something that was a rare achievement for girls in her village. Her best friend, Adesuwa, had also passed, and they were both bubbling with excitement. It was Adesuwa's birthday also, and they decided to celebrate in style, something they had never done before. They decided to visit a disco club in a nearby town called Elket, a place they had heard about but never dared to go. That night, the club was a world away from the quiet of Mperini. It was alive with bright lights, loud music, and the energy of people celebrating life. Edidiong and Adesuwa were overwhelmed, but in a good way. It was a night of first. First time drinking, first time dancing in a club, and the first time meeting men like Tamuno and Savaria. Tamuno was there on a break after a long day of work at the swamp rig. He was young, confident, and used to getting what he wanted. Savario, his Italian colleague, was equally charming, and together they made a striking pair. When they noticed Edidiong and Adesuwa, they immediately approached them, their interest piqued by the girl's innocence and beauty. As the night wore on, Edidiong found herself drawn to Tamuno. He was older, experienced, and knew how to talk to a girl in a way that made her feel special. But as the drinks kept coming, Edidiong began to feel dizzy and disoriented. Tamuno noticed and suggested that she step outside for some fresh air. He led her to his car, and that's where the night took a dark turn. In the car, Edidiong tried to regain her composure, but everything was a blur. She felt Tamuno's presence beside her, his voice soft but insistent. She tried to protest when he began to touch her, but her words were weak and slurred. She told him she was a virgin, that she wanted to wait until marriage, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. The pain that followed was searing, and as tears streamed down her face, she heard Tamuno's empty promises that he would marry her. When it was over, Edidiong was dropped off at the town center, her body and soul shattered. The next morning, the memories of the night before came back in flashes. Meeting the two men, being taken to the car, the pain, and the tears. But their names were a blur, and their faces began to fade from her memory as the days passed. Determined to find answers, Edidiong and Adesuwa took a boat to the swamp rig, hoping to confront the men who had taken so much from her. But when they arrived, they were met with blank stares and unhelpful answers. Without names or clear descriptions, finding Tamuno and Savario among the many workers was impossible. They returned to Nkorini, defeated and disillusioned. The days and weeks that followed were some of the darkest in Edidiong's life. She felt like a part of her had been stolen, a part that she could never get back. The shame and guilt weighed heavily on her, even though she knew deep down that it wasn't her fault. But in a village like Nkorini, such things were whispered about, and the fear of being judged by others kept her silent. Edidiong's only solace was her studies. She threw herself into her studies, determined to escape the village and the memories that haunted her. When she was awarded a scholarship to study accounting at a university in Lagos, it felt like a lifeline. She packed her bags and left Nkorini without looking back. Lagos was everything she had hoped it would be. A city of opportunities, a place where she could reinvent herself. She worked hard, focusing on her studies and later on her career. The city's fast pace and constant activity helped her to bury the past, at least for a while. But Lagos was also a city of lonely nights, and Edidiong often found herself thinking about the future she had dreamed of before that night. She wanted to find love, to have a family, but the trauma of her past made it difficult to trust again. She went on dates, but none of them ever led to anything serious. The fear of being hurt again was too great. Years passed, and Edidiong had built a successful life for herself in Lagos. She had a good job at a reputable accounting firm, a comfortable apartment, and a small circle of friends who were like family to her. But the loneliness persisted, and she began to wonder if she would ever find someone to share her life with. Then one day, as she was running errands in the city, she bumped into a man who seemed oddly familiar. He was tall, with a kind smile and an air of confidence. They apologized to each other and exchanged a few polite words before going their separate ways. But something about the encounter stayed with Edidiong. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had seen him before. A few weeks later, they met again, this time at a friend's party. The man introduced himself as Tamuno, and as they talked, Edidiong found herself drawn to him in a way she hadn't felt in years. He was charming, intelligent, and attentive, everything she had ever wanted in a partner. They exchanged numbers, and before long, they were seeing each other regularly. Their relationship blossomed quickly. Tamuno was unlike any man Edidiong had ever met. He was caring, thoughtful, and seemed genuinely interested in her life and her past. But as they grew closer, Edidiong began to have strange dreams. They were vivid and unsettling, flashes of a night she had tried so hard to forget. The dreams were disjointed, a blur of faces and voices, but one image kept coming back to her, a man leaning over her in a car, his face obscured by shadow. Despite the dreams, Edidiong found herself falling in love with Tamuno. He made her feel safe, loved, and valued, something she hadn't felt in a long time. They spent more and more time together, and Edidiong began to see a future with him. A future that she had once thought was out of reach. 6 months into their relationship, Tamuno proposed to Edidiong. He had planned everything meticulously, a romantic evening at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city, complete with candlelight and soft music. As the night sky enveloped Lagos, he got down on one knee and presented her with a ring. Edidiong was overwhelmed with emotion, tears welling up in her eyes as she realized how much she loved him. She said yes, and they embraced. The moment feeling like a dream come true. But as the excitement of the proposal settled, Tamuno mentioned something that made Edidiong's heart skip a beat. "Edidiong, there's something I've been meaning to tell you," he began, his tone serious. "You mentioned once that you're from Nkoriini. I've actually been there before, years ago." Edidiong stiffened slightly, the memories of her village flooding back. "You have?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes," Tamuno replied, nodding. "It was about 7 years ago. I was working on an oil rig nearby. I was only there for a short time, but I remember it clearly because I had a difficult experience." Edidiong's heart began to race. She had never talked about her past with Tamuno, and now, hearing him mention Nkoriini brought back a wave of emotions she wasn't ready to face. "What happened?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tamuno sighed, looking away for a moment before meeting her eyes again. "There was this one night, after work, when my colleague and I went to a nearby town, Elket. We met some people at a club, and I made some really bad decisions that night. It's something I've regretted ever since." Edidiong felt her throat tighten. "Bad decisions?" she echoed, her mind spinning. Tamuno nodded, his expression pained. "I had someone, a young woman. I didn't even know her name, but I've never been able to forget what I did. I've been trying to make amends in my own way, but it's something that haunts me." Edidiong's words seemed to collapse around her. Could it be? Could the man she had fallen in love with be the same man who had caused her so much pain? "I don't know if she's still there," Tamuno continued, unaware of Edidiong's inner turmoil. "But for the past 7 years, I've been anonymously funding scholarships for girls from Nkoriini, hoping that somehow, it would reach her. I know it doesn't undo what I did, but it's the only way I could think of to make things right." Edidiong felt like she couldn't breathe. The pieces were falling into place, the scholarships, the timeline, and now, Tamuno's confession. But she needed to be sure. "Tamuno," she said slowly, trying to keep her voice steady, "do you remember anything about the girl? Anything at all?" Tamuno frowned, clearly trying to recall. "Not much," he admitted. "She was very young, and I think she was with a friend. It was her friend's birthday. That's all I remember." Edidiong's blood ran cold. The memory of that night came rushing back, Adesuwa's birthday, the club, the overwhelming dizziness, and then, the car. The face that had haunted her dreams was now staring at her, filled with regret. She couldn't stay there any longer. "I need some air," she muttered, standing up abruptly and heading for the door. Tamuno called after her, concerned, but she couldn't face him. Not yet. Edidiong spent the next few days in a haze of confusion and pain. She didn't answer Tamuno's calls or texts. She didn't know how to process the revelation that the man she loved was the same man who had taken everything from her. How could she reconcile the kind, loving Tamuno she knew now with the man who had violated her all those years ago? Adesuwa, sensing something was wrong, came to see her. Edidiong finally broke down and told her everything, how she had fallen in love with Tamuno, how he had proposed, and how he had unknowingly revealed that he was the man from that fateful night. I don't know what to do, Adesuwa, Edidiong sobbed. I love him, but how can I be with him after what he did? Adesuwa listened quietly, then took Edidiong's hands in hers. Edidiong, people can change. You've seen how much he regrets what happened. He's been trying to make it right, even if he didn't know it was you. But this is your decision. You need to do what's right for you. The next day, Edidiong finally agreed to meet with Tamuno. They sat in her apartment, the silence between them heavy with unspoken words. Edidiong, please talk to me, Tamuno pleaded, his eyes filled with concern. She took a deep breath, trying to find the strength to speak. Tamuno, the girl you heard that night. It was me. Tamuno froze, his face going pale. What? He whispered, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. It was me, Edidiong repeated, her voice trembling. You're the man who took everything from me that night in the car. You're the reason I've spent the last 7 years trying to put my life back together. The shock on Tamuno's face was undeniable. He stood up, pacing the room as he ran his hands through his hair. Oh my God, Edidiong, he breathed, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I never imagined. I didn't know. Edidiong watched him, feeling a strange mix of emotions, anger, sadness, confusion. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said finally. But I need to understand why you did it. Why did you do that to me? Tamuno sank back into the chair, his head in his hands. I was young, reckless, and stupid, he admitted, his voice full of shame. I didn't think about the consequences of my actions. I was caught up in the moment, and I hate you. I've regretted it every single day since then. Edidiong felt tears welling up in her eyes. You destroyed my life, Tamuno. Do you understand that? I've been living with this pain for years, and now, to find out it was you all along. It's too much. I know, Tamuno whispered, his voice hoarse. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me. The days that followed were some of the hardest Edidiong had ever faced. She was torn between her love for Tamuno and the pain of what he had done to her. She wanted to hate him, to push him away and never see him again. But a part of her still loved him, still wanted to believe that people could change. Tamuno, on the other hand, was devastated. He had never imagined that the woman he had fallen in love with was the same one he had hurt all those years ago. He knew that he couldn't change the past, but he was determined to do whatever it took to prove to Edidiong that he was a different man now. He began attending therapy, not just for himself, but to understand the gravity of what he had done and how it had affected Edidiong's life. He wanted to be better, for her and for himself. He also continued to fund the scholarships in Perini, hoping that his actions, however small, could make a difference in the lives of other young women. Meanwhile, Edidiong sought solace in her friends and her work. She needed time to process everything, to figure out what she wanted. Adesuwa was a constant source of support, reminding her that she had the strength to make the right decision, whatever that might be. One evening, after much reflection, Edidiong decided to visit Mporini. She needed to reconnect with her roots to find the clarity she was searching for. Tamuno offered to accompany her, but she declined, needing to do this on her own. Back in Mporini, Edidiong found herself at the riverbank where she used to play as a child. The memories of her childhood came flooding back, mixing with the pain of her past and the confusion of her present. She spent hours by the water, thinking about everything she had been through, everything she had survived. As the sun began to set, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She realized that she couldn't change what had happened, but she could choose how she wanted to move forward. And she knew that she couldn't carry the weight of her anger and pain forever. When she returned to Lagos, she asked Tamuno to meet her. They sat together in her apartment, the tension between them palpable. "I've made my decision," Edidiong said, her voice calm but firm. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully forgive you, but I'm willing to try. I love you, Tamuno, but this won't be easy. If we are going to move forward, it has to be on my terms." Tamuno nodded, his eyes filled with relief and gratitude. "I understand, Edidiong. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your forgiveness and rebuild your trust. I'm committed to this, to us." With their decision made, Edidiong and Tamuno began the slow, difficult process of healing together. It wasn't easy. There were days when the past would resurface, bringing with it old wounds and painful memories. But they were determined to face those moments together, to talk openly about their feelings, and to support each other through the difficult times. They continued with therapy, both individually and as a couple. The sessions were intense, but they helped them to understand each other better, to communicate more effectively, and to build a stronger foundation for their relationship. As they worked through their issues, they also began to plan their future together. They decided to move forward with their wedding, but on a much smaller scale. It would be an intimate ceremony, with only their closest friends and family present. It was important to them that their wedding be a reflection of the new life they were building together, one based on honesty, trust, and mutual respect. The wedding took place in a small garden in Lagos, surrounded by flowers and greenery. As they exchanged vows, Edidiong felt a sense of closure and peace. She knew that their journey was far from over, but she also knew that they were stronger together, that their love had been tested and had come out stronger on the other side. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more content, and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Drop a comment below with your thoughts or any questions, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay awesome.